Fundraising mindset in nonprofits, my tips for handling rejections. Are you ready for a no from your donor? I'm not saying are you looking forward to it. I know none of us like to receive a rejection. I've been there. I know what it feels like when you are getting a no, when you are needing a yes to get the money to keep going with the good work for your community. But what I want to know from you is, do you know what you want to do? Do you know what you need to do if you receive that rejection? I want to share a few tips with you that worked for me and hopefully might be helpful for you too. So, the first tip that I have for you is redefine what is success. I know I've said it before in one of my videos here that there isn't a successful fundraiser who has had 100% success, right? So that means that however successful you are, you will always receive a few rejections, a few no's. Yes, so if you define success as getting approvals, getting a yes or getting just yeses, then nobody can be successful, right? Or can be successful all the time. So it's important to look at what is success that's reachable for all of us and that has a meaning for your nonprofit. So, what I mean to say is that if you define success as keeping going until you get all the yeses, all the project proposals approved that you need, that is success, right? Keeping going with the hard work, moving past rejections, and getting there in the end, right? That could also be success. Success could also be learning from receiving a rejection and doing better next time. Success could also be having a plan and executing on it no matter what, until, of course, the time comes when you need to adjust the plan because the circumstances are so different that the original plan cannot work anymore. But what I mean is keeping going with the plan, even though maybe you feel a little bit bad about it, maybe you feel pessimistic because of a rejection that you received or something like that, right? Not stopping executing a good plan just because you feel bad because somebody said, I'm not going to give you money for this project proposal. I'm interested in hearing from you. What is your tip? What is your experience with receiving rejections and handling rejections? If you want to share them in the comments below, that would be great. If you prefer sharing them in my private free community, then please look up the link for the nonprofit support community in the text below and share your experiences and maybe tips there. I'm Suzanne Bakker. I'm a nonprofit operations strategist, and I love all the things that most people find scary, annoying, boring, or confusing, or all of these together. And in this channel, I talk about all of those things, right? Finance, admin, HR, contracting, management, fundraising, and so on and so forth. If you're interested in reading more stories about these topics, then look in the text below and join my weekly newsletters on Mondays and Thursdays to receive stories from nonprofit operations topics. So I promise to share a few tips with you on how to handle rejections and what are things that helped me. So the first tip I shared is redefine success and look at success as something that is to do with moving forward and your own commitment rather than the end result, which there's no way that you could ever be 100% successful in fundraising. I'm sorry to say, I'm a good fundraiser, but I don't have 100% success for sure. So my next tip is try to generate some positive energy. So for me, what works, because I'm a practical person, I like to do things and I like to do things that give me the feeling that I'm moving forward, that I'm taking control of the situation and not letting this donor no decide my future. So I'm that kind of person. So for me, it helps to get going and to do things before I start reflecting. So what I like to do to bring some positive energy is to look at my pipeline. and then to say like, hey, that's nice, so I got a no, but I have already 3 other proposals that are sitting at 3 other donors' desks waiting for a review, and so there could still be success coming out of those proposals that are waiting for a decision. And that could give me positive energy because I know that in the past I have actually prepared for a no by submitting a lot of proposals and making sure that every time I have more than one proposal pending a decision, so that when a decision is negative, I still have another pot on the fire, as they say. Yeah, another thing that I do is look at deadlines for upcoming calls for proposals or opportunities to approach a donor for an maybe a non-publicly shared deadline, right? Maybe there's a donor that you can ask for some extra support or a budget extension or something like that, right? So I'm going to look at what are things that I can do now to generate money for project work in the future by submitting new proposals or by trying to get a bit more money out of the donors that I already have, right? And the goodwill that I already built up. Then as a last do activity that I do is really do a reality check on the situation. So really look at, okay, I get this no now. What does it really mean? What is the impact of this no on my organization, my team, on the community that I serve? Is it really going to be a big problem? Is that problem really going to happen now? Or is it something that we will feel maybe 6 months from now, so that I still have 6 months time to fix it or try to avoid this problem from appearing, or at least making sure that the problem will be smaller at that time than it looks to be now, right? So sometimes a reality check can give you a positive energy because maybe the problem isn't as bad as you think it was. And sometimes it can show you that, yes, you do have a huge problem, but then at least you are still in control because you know the problem, you know what it looks like, you know the size of the problem, you know when it's going to bite you, and then you can still take measures and take steps, make a plan how you're going to deal with that in that moment, even if that moment might be tomorrow, right? Would of course be good if you would be prepared for that in advance, but that is one of my next tips. But before we get to that tip, my next step that I do after making sure that I understand what is my definition of success, after I've done some things that have given me positive energy, then I'm going to sit down and learn from this experience. And I'm going to actually analyze the project proposal, the documents we sent, the call for proposals, and I'm going to see if there's anything there that I can see where maybe there's a mismatch. Maybe we have a great proposal, but we sent it to a donor who's not really interested in our topic or our community or our way of working. It's possible, right? Sometimes we have a misjudgment, or sometimes we take a risk, or sometimes we have a rosy colored glasses on when we prepare a proposal, but when we take a step back and look at it with fresh eyes later, then we realize that this donor was never for us, right? That's possible. It's also possible that you see that maybe your proposal wasn't good. And maybe it wasn't well thought through, and maybe the donor might have noticed that maybe there's no logic in the activities or something else wrong. It could also be that it was a little bit of a rush job and the proposal maybe looks messy, or maybe you forgot to attach some important documents so that the donor couldn't see that you meet all the requirements that they have for their grantees, things like that, right? So first I look at all of those things to see if there's anything there where I think like, yeah, we missed a point somewhere here. We didn't really explain how our proposal is actually an answer to the needs and the priorities of the donor in the way that they explain it in their call for proposals or their general guidelines, for example. Then after that, I reach out to the donor and see if they're able and willing to have a call with me, a talk with me, to explain to me a little bit more about what made them say no to this proposal. Yes, some donors are able and willing to do this. Some are not, because they might get, I don't know, thousands of proposals and it's not feasible for them to spend so much time on the rejected ones while they need actually to start working with the approved ones. But even donors who have a lot of applications and might not have time for a one-to-one talk about it, they might be able to send you a score sheet perhaps. So some donors have score sheets where they can show you how many points you scored for certain criteria that they used to make a selection from all the proposals, right? And that can already help you a lot, even without further clarification. You can still see like, hey, we didn't get the full points for the budget. What's up with that? We didn't get the full points for relevance. What did we miss there, right? So it would be helpful if the donor would be able to tell you, but if they can't, this can still be a good source of information for you and a good starting point for reflection for you to see, like, what can we learn from this so that we can do better next time, right? And of course, it helps if you have a conversation with a donor that you can show that you've also looked at your unsuccessful proposal yourself, and then you might say like, yeah, I wasn't really sure that we explained clearly enough how our proposal actually fits your strategic objectives, for example. And then if they say, yes, that was one of the things that wasn't clear for us and that made us not convinced, then you can see if there's space that you can submit the same proposal in the next round, in their next call for proposals, perhaps. And to be totally honest with you, that's something that I've done. So there's one proposal that we finally got approved after 4 or 5 times submitting more or less the same proposal to exactly the same donor, because it was clear that the proposal wasn't bad, but it wasn't a priority at the time. And there were some other reasons why this donor contact person at the time was a bit hesitant to give us that grant. But I persisted. 2 years long I persisted. I resubmitted a little bit tweaked version of the proposal 4 or 5 times. And then finally it was accepted and we got the money and we were able to do the things, right? So sometimes it can take a bit of time, but that is only worth your time investment, of course, if you have a sense that there is a chance that you might get it in the end. And in this case, I had that feeling that there could be a chance. And when I know there's a chance, I'm not giving up. I'm going all in, right? So the next thing that I want to share with you as a tip is self-care, right? I mentioned it in the beginning already. Self-care is really the prerequisite for you being able to take care of your team, your organization, and the community that you serve as a whole, right? First, you need to make sure that you are stable, steady, powerful, and able to understand what your next best step is. And so sometimes that means that you need to take a step back and say, okay, what do I need now to feel calm, to go back to feeling optimistic and having a sense of purpose that's positive for our future, right? So for me personally, I've said this in another video before, it always helps to go out and to walk to the sea, to look at the sand and the sea waves, and then I get totally relaxed. And all my problems seem to be taken away by the waves, or maybe the wind, or maybe the seagulls. I don't know what it is, but for me, that's my magic place. Maybe you have a magic place too, or maybe you have a magic activity, like maybe reading, drinking hot cocoa, just taking a walk in your neighborhood, calling your best friend, whatever it is. Make sure that you know what you need when you feel bad, and that you are able to give that to yourself, and that you allow yourself to give that to yourself when you need it, at the moment when you receive a rejection of your project proposal, for example. Then the final tip I want to share with you is be strategic. As I said, I am a person who likes to start acting and doing things, right? I like to go and check my pipeline, get a new proposal, talk to the donor, etc., etc. But of course, it doesn't make sense to go running around like a headless chicken. You need to be strategic about it, right? You need to know what makes sense to do and what is the right order of things and what is the right moment for things to do, right? So that means that you sometimes need to take a step back and to really look at what is happening here. Is this my first rejection? Okay. Are we getting rejections one after the other? Did we maybe not even get one approval or maybe one very long ago, right? So if you see that there's a problem, and if you see that this is like something that's a challenge with your fundraising in general, and if you see what's the risk of that for your organization and for the community that you're serving, then of course you want to see, okay, what's underneath this problem, right? So we need money. We are very good at getting money from private individuals, but we're not very good at getting money from grants or vice versa. Yeah, it could be either way. What is the risk? If we don't have a good mix of sources of income, then we might meet a funding gap. And a funding gap would mean that maybe we can't pay salaries, maybe we can't do the activities for the community. And that could be very damaging to the community that you're serving if you are providing a very needed service that cannot be interrupted without damage, right? So you need to really assess the situation and see, okay, what's happening here and why is that happening? Are we maybe simply not understanding well enough how to build up a good project proposal? Maybe donors use terms in their application forms or in their calls for proposals that we think we understand, but maybe we misunderstand them. Or maybe we give the wrong answer because we are sort of not 100% sure. Yeah, that could be an issue. You can solve all those issues, but you need to know what the issue is before you can solve it, right? If you don't know really how to build a good project proposal, then that's going to hinder you from being successful. But if you are good at that, but you're just picking the wrong donor, yeah, then a perfect proposal will not make sense because the wrong donor will not be interested in your perfect proposal. It could also be that maybe you're just not listening carefully enough. You're picking the right donor, your plans are good, but you're not making this bridge between your project idea and the donor that you are submitting your project idea to. And maybe you're not listening to what they need, what they want, what their desires are, and what's important for them. That's also something that you can learn, but you need to know that you need to learn this. Otherwise, you can't take the next step, of course. So there's lots of things that could be creating a challenge for you in being successful in submitting donation request letters or project proposals. It could also be, for example, that you're not giving yourself enough time to prepare proposals. Maybe you're a deadline dancer and you're always in a hurry to submit everything. And then that means that every time either the proposal looks a little bit sloppy, a little bit messy, or maybe you forget to attach important annexes like the budget or maybe your registration or something else that the donor has asked for. And so there are different solutions to each of these issues. And if you don't know what issue is causing the problem, then of course what you can do is make a plan strategically and say, okay, next time we're going to take more time to prepare our proposal. And we're going to make sure that we don't forget to add anything and that our proposal looks very neat with nice graphics, visuals, the fonts are nicely consistent, and so on and so forth. All the questions answered. Totally perfect, right? We take time to make sure that we have everything in place. If that works, then you solve the problem. If that doesn't work, you just go to the next potential issue and you tweak that just until you find the solution and you see, okay, now we are successful at getting money from donation requests or grant proposals, right? And then, of course, it's good to make a plan also how you're going to make sure that you keep that good practice going, and that you include in your plan as well, like, how are we going to learn from any rejection that we might get in the future? How are we going to handle that by treating ourselves and learning from it one after the other, right? And then in the next video, I would like to talk about the positive scenario, about what happens when you do get a grant, right? If you do get a grant, you do need to make sure that you're ready to implement it, of course, and that you're ready to manage it properly, for example, with having good financial systems. So in the next video, we're going to talk about 101 nonprofit accounting, where I'll share some tips for you what to make sure to have in place for successful project accounting. Looking forward to seeing you there, or before then in my nonprofit support community, to talk more about handling rejections and analyzing the reasons for rejections of your project proposals or donation requests. Bye for now.